Okay, so behind that tab number 3, you've got your list of curriculum with all the books and what to expect and primary concepts. You also have a list of ideas for additional things to do with each story. We'll come back to this in just a little bit. You also have SEEDS monthly performance standards. This talks about how Reading Pal's curriculum ties in with the Sunshine Standards, which had been our state standards here in Florida. The process is a little in flux now, and there's some talk of revamping the core. But for now, the Reading Pal's curriculum ties in. And what we did here is we took sort of specialist language and put it more in layman's terms about what each kind of grouping of books, what you should be focusing on. So for volunteers, this is a great way to check and see if you're doing it right. With Reading Pals, that's the most common phone call I get in the beginning of the school year. I don't think I'm doing it right. So we'll talk later about how there's really no way to do this program wrong. But this, if you really are worried about it, or you have some concerns, or you want to just check with yourself and make sure that you're doing things, kind of covering the basics, this can be a great technique. For example, for books 1 through 4, you can read the focus on and ask yourself these questions. Listening to a story and answering questions. Yeah, we're doing that. Knowing what the words in the story mean. Yeah, we spent some time talking about the different animals. Talking about pictures on the front of the book. Yeah, we talk about what does that mean. And so you can just kind of go through like that, just sort of check yourself. There won't be a quiz on this. I won't show up and say, why didn't you do this particular thing? But it is a great reference guide for you as well to make sure that you're just doing what it is we're asking you to do and being as helpful with the students as you can. And then we also have here SEEDS packet session format. Now this is one of my favorite handouts in the whole manual. This essentially outlines a Reading Pal session. You're going to prepare, you're going to introduce the book, you're going to read aloud and ask story questions. After you read the book, you're going to ask questions about the content. You're going to do a conversation and vocabulary development activity and a conversation and language enhancement activity. Now, what do those last two mean? When you go to the next page, you're going to see our SEEDS Steps to Success cards. Now, Steps to Success cards really, when I opened this box, I thought, good Lord, how are we going to get all this done in 30 minutes, right? This is a lot. And each student gets 2 visits a week, so there are 2 different cards, and I'll explain a little later sort of what that means. But each student is going to cover each book in the curriculum twice this year, as long as, of course, they have 2 reading pals from the beginning of the year. So they're going to cover the book once in the fall and once in the spring and do a little bit more in-depth activities. The first reading, really more of an introduction. The second one gets more in-depth with our activities. So you'll see here, you have the first 4 sections are really for the volunteer. You've got preparation, introduction of book, reading aloud, and after reading. And I'll zoom in so you can see that. That's really for you, the volunteer. That gives you, when you're looking at it online, maybe the day before, it gives you a really great overview of what this book is going to be about. Some sample questions to ask, what the vocabulary cards will be. It's important to remember, we're not reading War and Peace here. We're reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar, or The Cat in the Hat, or Friends at School. So don't get too worried about reading the entire book ahead of time, although we do have some resources behind tab number 4. I'm sorry, tab number 5. There's a sample attendance sheet which we'll talk about in just a minute, but there's also a page called Reading Pals Online that shows you the link to go to see the curriculum cards online. I also have an Amazon wish list so you can read summaries of the book and glance at a few pages as well. What most volunteers will do, the folks who prefer to prepare, will look at the curriculum cards and flashcards online, and then maybe at the end of their visit they'll kind of flip through the book for next week to have a sense of what that book is about. Volunteers have also done things like getting the books from the library. I do have a YouTube channel that is on our Reading Pals page at the United Way website that has videos of someone somewhere reading, I think, 26 of the 29 books in the curriculum. So you can see those videos as well. And there's more being added all the time. We update that each year. So you do have that available to you as a resource as well. So that's a bit just of how the curriculum is structured, the overview. You want to make sure you're asking those open-ended questions, who, what, where, when, why. Behind tab number 4, the very first page that you're going to see are the 5 W's and an H. So this gives you some examples of open-ended questions. What do you think will happen next in the story? Which animal was your favorite? Where do you think all the animals live in this book? So that's how you can introduce those open-ended questions. We want to stay away from a whole lot of yes or no. One of the things I hear people say a lot, not with Reading Pals, but just in general is, did you like that book? Yes? Or, did you like that book? No. You're not really having a conversation then. Now, if you ask that yes or no question, you follow up by saying, what was your favorite part of the book? If they say yes. Or, what didn't you like about this book? If they say no. So yes or no questions are okay as long as you're following them up with an open-ended question. We really want to engage the kids in conversation. What you'll find is the beginning of the school year or the beginning of your visits, it'll typically be about 80% you talking, 20% the kids talking, and then as you get towards the end of the year, that's going to actually flip-flop. So the kids are doing more of the talking and really kind of guiding the sessions as we go along. So each curriculum set also comes with at least one vocabulary flashcard. Now, worth noting is that the number of flashcards is going to vary. Our first book, From Head to Toe, has a very large number of vocabulary cards. I think there are about 20 or 25. Book number 2, Round Like a Ball, has one vocabulary card that says round on it. So the number is going to vary. Now, as a trainer, you want to let people know that because otherwise they flip out if they just see one vocabulary card. So, From Head to Toe, you can see the vocabulary cards are all body parts. This is also, as a trainer, why it's helpful to use the same book every time, because then you kind of know how you're going to demonstrate some of these things. So what I will do, I tell the volunteers that there are a few different ways to use vocabulary cards. This is not the old skill and drill style. Knee, arms, chest, right? That's not what we're doing with these. We can do lots of different activities with vocabulary cards that are not skill and drill. So what I do is, I find with kids, if you can put the word game in front of everything, they will go with you wherever you want them to go with you. So what I'll say is, should we play a game? And then of course they're going to say, yeah! So there's a few ways I can do them. I might have my kiddos, I'll have my pair of kids, and I demonstrate, as a trainer, I demonstrate this with volunteers. I say, you guys will be my kids. And I fan the cards out like this, and then I say, pick a card. And then the volunteer will pick a card. And I say, look very carefully at that picture. What do you think that word says? And they'll look, and some of them will kind of play along, and they'll say, waist. Well, that's close. It's this part right here. We can wiggle them. And they'll say, hips. And I say, that's right. So you get to keep that card because you got the right answer. Okay, it's your turn. Pick a card. Now, I did this activity a few times with my students. We did this for 20 minutes. We just went back and forth picking cards and naming body parts. So that's one way you can use the vocabulary card. Pick a card, take a look at that picture, tell me what you think it says. They're also then learning to make the connection that the word that's written down has something to do with the picture, which is essential for reading picture books. So they're learning a key skill here. And pictures and picture books really are about giving us context clues to what the words say. So that's one way that you can use them. Now, another way that I've used them is this. I'll divide them in half and give each of my students half. And I'll say, okay, what I do is I say, close your eyes, and then I give them half their cards, and I say, okay, now open your eyes and flip over your pile of cards. And so they'll flip them over. And I say, now, we're going to play a game when we read this book. Whenever you hear your body part, I want you to hold it up in the air and wave it like this, so I know that you have the right answer. And so I might say, I am a giraffe. And from our book, remember, I'd be holding the book and doing this, and I would say, I am a giraffe, and I bend my, and the kids will say, neck, and I'll say, that's right. Look in your pile, look in your pile. Who's got the card that says neck on it? Who's got the card with the neck picture? Who's got it? And then the kid will, I've got it, I've got it. That's right. And so that's another way we can use them. We can use the cards while we're reading. Now sometimes, though, we're going to get a book that's going to have a lot of words they don't know. With From Head to Toe, I might play a little touch your head, touch your shoulders, touch your waist, wiggle your hips, to just get a sense of if they know their body parts. You'll see sort of a hesitation when you're asking them to show you body parts, and that can give me a clue later on when we do our activities where we might want to focus. But some books, for example, book number 24 is The Little Mouse, The Red Ripe Strawberry, and The Big Hungry Bear. So with that book, the vocabulary cards are strawberry, bear, and mouse. To read a book called The Little Mouse, The Red Ripe Strawberry, and The Big Hungry Bear, you have to know what those 3 words mean or you're going to be lost in the story. So for that one, I might do what's called front loading, where I just do a quick check with the students and make sure that they know what those vocabulary words mean. Or for example, if you're reading Round Like a Ball and they don't know what round is, you want to cover that one ahead of time. So you'll get a sense as you go along and you get more experience, sort of when to do them. Now, typically it takes a new volunteer about 4 to 6 weeks to really, 4 to 6 visits to really feel comfortable and feel like you know what you're doing. So please be patient with yourself in the beginning, be patient with your students. If you need to have your curriculum card out and you're holding it like this when you're doing the activity, that's okay, right? You want to make sure that you just are patient with yourself and give yourself enough time to feel comfortable. That being said, though, if you do find as we go along that this program is not for you, or it doesn't fit your schedule, whatever it is, I promise I won't take it personal. Just please let me know. You can send me an email, give me a phone call, send a carrier pigeon, whatever you need to do, but just please let me know. Each year we have kids who are dropped from the program because we don't know their volunteer has stopped showing up and we're not able to get a replacement. So just please let us know if you do decide it's not for you. Now, another activity I want to share, this is just sort of one of my own ideas that I use. It's not one of the official ones in the training, but one of the other games that I play with these particular vocabulary cards is we'll read the book, and then I want to sort of gauge comprehension. So what I'll do is I'll split the cards up again, and we're going to do a moving around activity. What I'll do is I'll say to my students, okay, what's at the top of our body? What's at the top? And you'll notice I'm leading them to the right answer by patting my head. And I'll say, what's at the top of our body? And they'll say head, and I'll say, that's right, who's got the head? So they'll look through their little piles. I do. So then I'll have them get up, put the card with the head on the floor, and then I'll say, okay, have a seat, who's next? What's next? What's this? And they'll say neck, and I'll say, that's right, who's got the picture of the neck? And then they'll look through their piles, and they'll say, oh, they'll look, this is kind of a hard one, so they'll look, I do. So then I have that student get up and put the picture of the neck right underneath the picture of the head on the floor. And we'll go top to bottom from head to toe and lay out the body parts in the proper order. So we're getting a little science in there as well. And the kids love that one. We always have a really good time when we do that lesson. So after reading, you want to ask some questions. What can you do with your shoulders? What can you do with your neck? And actually, just a tip for me to you with this book, know that with Reading Pals, you also have a lot of room to put in your own style. Your story time might look very different than my story time with my students. Mine tend to be very energetic, very interactive. We're waving our arms like a monkey. We're jumping up into those kind of things. So for this book, I actually read this book as a stand-up story. My students, I don't even sit down when we read this book. Well, I say, let's stand up. Let's read this story and stand up. I am a seal and I clap my hands. Can you do it? Now I make a seal noise. I'll go and clap my hands. And then I have the kids do it with me as well. And so then I'll say, read the next one. I am a gorilla and I thump my chest. Can you do it? Now, just kind of a funny thing that happens. Because I'm thumping with one hand, because I'm holding the book, you might see the kids thump with 2 hands. If I see that, I'll stop and put the book down, and I'll do it like this. And then again, reviewing the body parts, another activity you can do with vocabulary cards, you can have the kids take turns holding up a card and you say neck. Can you show me your neck? Elbow. Can you show me your elbow? And you can do it that way and go through body parts. You might also do another stand-up game. Sometimes it's helpful to break up your session if you can tell your kids are getting kind of ants in the pants. And we'll have some video clips later that will show this, show you kind of what that looks like. You can always get up and play a game. This book is a great one. You can have them do the motions in the book, right? Can you bend your neck like a giraffe? Can you clap your hands like a seal? Can you wiggle your hips like an alligator? And you can have them do those and then sit down and go back to your other activities. Now, a couple of helpful tips for carrying out the activities. You'll pop back to tab number 3 in our training manual. And remember, this is yours to keep, so please feel free to write notes in here if you'd like. You'll notice when you look at the Steps to Success cards, we had that conversations. I said the first 4 were for you. For the activities, there's 2 sections. Conversations and vocabulary development, which you can see here at the bottom of this one. And then conversations and language enhancement. 6 activities with a 4-year-old and 2 4-year-olds in 30 minutes is a lot. So what you can do with the activities, here's a good rule of thumb that we found has worked really well over the years for Reading Pals. Before you go to your session, or right before you start, pick 1 vocabulary activity, 1 language activity, and have a 3rd activity in your back pocket. Sometimes things are going to take longer than you think they will, and sometimes things that you think will take a long time, the kids are going to burn through really quickly. Now, with picking the activities, as you get to know your students, you'll get a sense of where their background knowledge is, what early literacy skills they already have, what they need to work on. So, the activities are numbered. You'll see activity 1, 2, and 3. Typically, activity 1 and 2, or 1 is the least difficult, 4 is the most challenging. So keep that in mind when you're thinking ahead to your working with your students. You want to always explain in simple words how to complete the activity. If you tell them what to do and you get a blank face, you need to explain it again in a different way. You also want to make sure you're giving them time to complete the activity. A good rule of thumb with kids, particularly ESL students or English as a second language learner, tap your foot 10 times. Now that's if you can see the wheels moving, like if you can tell they're going through their vocabulary trying to come up with the word that you're looking for. It's just like adults. You can tell when an adult is thinking and when an adult has no idea what you mean. So tap your foot 10 times and give them enough time to come up with the answer. For us as adults, this is going to seem like a really long time. But for kids, you're giving them time to think of the answer. You also want to rotate the activities and make sure all kids are engaged. You might have to do 2 activities with 2 different kids at the same time. For example, with bag number 5, and as the trainer, I'll actually get bag number 5 out. The way I demonstrate this is bag number 5 is Dr. Seuss's ABCs. It's got a set of capital letters, a set of lowercase letters, and what I will do is I'll demonstrate having one child who's maybe knows a few more letters, pick out the letters from the lowercase pile as we read Dr. Seuss's ABCs, and then the kids who are a little behind will maybe pick out the capital letters, or maybe even that book comes with an ABC sheet. They might even just find the letter on the sheet because it's in alphabetical order, so they can kind of sing the alphabet song and do that 1-to-1 counting and find the right letter. So that's the way that I sort of demonstrate that skill, and that's bag number 5, Dr. Seuss's ABCs. The final thing is you want to help kids when they need it. If you just let them kind of sit there and they don't know what you're doing, you're kind of wasting time. So you might say, what I'll do with my kids, and you'll see this in the videos, I'll say, oh, can you find the A? It's right over there, it's orange. And you notice I'm kind of doing this, pointing to where it might be. Oh, it's right next to that purple W. Do you see it? There it is, yay! And we do it that way, so we're helping them to the right answer. You might even have another child whisper the answer to them. If you've got one kid who's ooh, 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 you can have them do that as well. So when you're wrapping up your session, you want to take the last 2 to 3 minutes to talk about your session. Today we talked about transportation. What was one thing that we can use for transportation? Cars, right. What's another one? Boats. So you're wrapping up what you talked about. You want to make sure you have the kids help you clean up. Even if you're doing 2 sessions back to back, have them help you put everything back in the bag. It's teaching responsibility and taking care of our things. And then you want to make sure that you say goodbye to each child by name. And you want to end on a positive note. Something like, I'm so glad I came to see you today. One thing that's important to keep in mind is a lot of the kids that we serve through Reading Pals are kids coming from poverty or low-income backgrounds. And a lot of kids, there have been studies, the most recent and well-known is Hart and Riesly, which showed that kids from low-income backgrounds tend to hear more negative words than positive words. It's 25 negative words for every 1 positive word that they hear. And that's for low-income kids. Now, if you take that and look at high-income kids from high-income families, it's 25 positive words for every 1 negative word they hear. So a lot of our kids are coming to school with an awful lot of negativity in their little red wagon. So keep that in mind when you're engaging with your students as well. And we'll talk about some behavior challenges that might come up too and how to address those. So this next section, as the trainer, I do in a few different ways. You can do a couple of things. You can either what I do is I preset and I put the bags on the back of every chair. You can either have the volunteers work in pairs, one person being the reader, one person pretending to be the 4-year-old, and have them basically do a session. I say read the book, and do one activity. And then you have them switch, and that takes about 30 minutes. So that's one way you can do it. What we've been using more recently that's been working really well is we give each volunteer a bag, and then we either have everyone, depending on the size of the group, if it's a smaller group, talk about what's in their bag, what they might do with the materials, and any additional ideas that come to them of things they might bring from home to enhance that lesson as well. You can either have everyone do it if it's a small group, or maybe pick 5 or 8 people to do that if it's a larger group. And that way it gives people a nice overview of the curriculum and what to expect. I, as the trainer, sometimes will pop in with comments of activities that I know other volunteers have done or things that I've used that have been effective for that lesson as well. So that's how you can do that. Then typically after we do that practice session, we go ahead and take a break. Usually just about 5-10 minutes, let people use the bathroom, grab some snacks, that kind of thing. So that's session 1 of Reading Pals training. We would take the break now, and then when we come back from training, we're going to talk about specifically working with 4-year-olds.